Hey guys, so on Tuesday when I launched the first video in what's this series, I promised that I'd give a more detailed farming plan whenever I could. This has taken a couple of days to format into something that actually doesn't look horrible to read, so I'm going to run through it real quick. And now, obviously bear in mind, this is subject to change. If I'm not having fun doing this, I'm going to do something else. It's a game at the end of the day. But the original plan was to focus a bit hard on rebel ships at the start instead of Geos. Just because I'm kind of sick of playing Geos. I've done a bunch of rerolls. It's always been Geo ships first, and they're good, but it gets boring after a while. Especially when they all look the same as well. But I went through a bunch of different farming guides, and the ones that stuck out to me are the ones listed on the screen right now, all of which I will link in the description below. But the phases that I'd like to try and go through with this account is to start building towards a rebel fleet as soon as I can. Now, I'm probably around the point where I'm hitting level 85, or maybe just after it. I'm aiming to get Beskar Mandalorian and Commander Luke Skywalker. CLS maybe even before 85. We'll see. But that hooks into the initial Grand Arena set of teams, which is going to be Andor Raddus, Mon Mothma, Bosk, Inquisitors, Empire, and CLS. Now from there is an option of building towards Grand Arena a bit more. Now, obviously the end game is still Jabba, so any of the stuff that I would be putting towards Grand Arena will always have Jabba in mind, hence a Bouch team, Dash Rendar team, seeing as Outrider is a requirement, and that kind of stuff. Savage is listed just because he's ridiculous on his own. I already plan to take a detour and aim for the Grand Inquisitor and Starkiller, just because they're really cool characters and I really want to have them. Executor is the plan for the other half of fleets, as bounty hunters would already have been picked up by that point to try and make a bounty hunter fleet together with the Executrix, but obviously Executor is a much better capital ship for bounty hunters. Now, the end game is still the same. Jedi Knight Luke, which is really going to be quite time consuming, but feeds really well into Jabba. Now, the original plan was Rebel fleets, of course, and this is how I'm hoping it to look at the start. Home 1, Biggs, Big Cass is U-Wing, Biston's U-Wing, and the Raven's Claw. The Gerbils guide was raving about how good the Raven's Claw was. I'm really interested to try it out, so this is what we're going to try and do. And he's another requirement for Starkiller, so it kind of all feeds in together. The bounty hunter ships are Executor plans for later, so these are all things I want to do. Houndstooth is just still stupidly good, so I would have gotten it anyway. Beskar Mandalorian feeds straight into the Razor Crest. The last time I tried to do a playthrough with a similar idea in mind, I ended up using the Razor Crest to unlock Millennium Falcon. I hadn't got Houndstooth up high enough at the time, and Razor Crest was capable of getting the job done as well. So it's a really, really good ship. Now, early game. The first two teams I want to try and put together for the light side, dark side is Admiral Raddus and the Inquisitorius team. Now, with the changes to how the guild shop works and how raid currency pays out, Jyn is far easier to get early than she ever was before, so that should make that team a little bit easier to put together early. Scarif Rebel Pathfinder won't be available until level 60. 65 actually, because of his fleet node. I can start getting him from the fleet arena shop, but his first node is at 65 because it's in chapter 2 of the fleet battles. But in between then and now, I can just use Biston in that slot and still have a viable Rogue One team. Their sustain is pretty good, with Radis's ability to give everyone protection back. Just before I started doing this, Radis became an accelerated farm. They're a solid defensive team. That hope is just sillily good. You can pull a whole battle back from almost complete defeat with it. It's fantastic. And because they're all rebels, it feeds straight into Palpatine as well. I know most people use the CLS requirements for Palpatine, and you can still do that here. I mean, if they're done sooner than the Radis team is, we may as well. But these guys are viable for Palpatine, and that's sort of what I had in mind. Inquisitorius will take... Okay, I paid $9.99 at the start to get the basic Inquisitorius bundle that unlocked all 5. Otherwise I would have been waiting until level 54 to just unlock 8th Brother. So I got him from the start that way. Now, these guys have pretty good sustain. You can feel the team ramping up as you level. Some teams don't really come online until the end. A Kylo Ren unmasked led First Order team doesn't really feel that strong until Kylo Ren's leadership gets maxed, which is level 84. But these guys, you can actually feel incremental improvements as you level with them, which I'm finding really enjoyable. The arena is full of Jedi teams when you're super early, because Anakin and Ahsoka come at the start. Everyone wants Mace for fleets, and it's always tempting to go for Grandmaster Yoda and Bastila Shan early. There's a lot of viability for Inquisitors in arena. They struggle a little bit against turn meter trained teams like Imperial Troopers, but if you can pick your matchups, they are insane. The plan obviously was to go into Grand Inquisitor with that. Third Sister much later, and the Scythe and the TIE Interceptor are both really strong endgame ships. Now my plan was to use these guys instead of Imperial Troopers or a generic Empire team to unlock R2-D2, which I'm still planning on doing after being in the account for a week or so, just over. And they're not all that difficult to farm. Yeah, 4 of them are on hard nodes, but they're all accelerated, and a lot of those nodes are very early, so it's not actually taking all that long to start building those up. 5th Brother is the only exception. He's a Cantina, but I've just 7-starred Farm Boy Luke, and I'm going to move on to him before 7-starring Old Ben for CLS, so I should be able to get him built up quite quickly. And the other core teams I was looking at, and these are just going to take a little bit more time, is Bounty Hunters. Bosk is very late game, but the rest of the team comes online reasonably early. I've got Boba, I've got Greef and Mando right now. Django is on the same node as the Houndstooth, so it seems natural to farm him if I'm going to be farming Bosk. These guys are what I would go to for Credit Heist. They have a Rebel Roundup in place of Imperial Troopers, which I won't have on this account. They feed into Chewbacca, and in turn, the ships that they prepare will be the ones I use to get Millennium Falcon. So it all, again, comes together. Mon Mothma is a team I really want to put together because I will have Bistan anyway from the early game Rogue One team. I'm going to absolutely have Kyle and Cara because I need them for BAM and Starkiller respectively. So it seemed natural to put together a Rebel Fighter team, and the Mon Mothma one is pretty much the best that isn't locked into specific characters like how Saw is. These guys are a really good defensive team. 3 out of 5 are pilots. Cara and Kyle obviously are requirements for stuff. Mon Mothma herself and Biggs will be requirements for profundity if you decide to go that way in the long run. The journey teams that I'm aiming towards at the start are the Beskar Mando team and the Commander Luke team. Now, there isn't a huge amount of competition trying to farm these because Luke, Stormtrooper Han, Leia and Old Ben are all on either Cantina nodes or in stores, which means they don't compete with the fact that all 5 of the Beskar Mando requirements are on hard nodes. So it is entirely possible to farm all of these characters at the same time, and that is what I'm aiming to do, apart from Old Ben might take a little bit longer because I'm waiting till I 7-star 5th brother and then I'm coming back to Old Ben. But these are pretty solid as well. IG-11 and Queel will feed into either a BAM team or a Dash team in the long run, so they'll all have utility. On the other side though, the Commander Luke requirements are kind of dead once you unlock Commander Luke. I mean, Leia's damage is pretty good. Stormtrooper Han could feed into a Sana team, which is an option. Not one I'm willing to pursue until Sana herself becomes an accelerated farm, but worth thinking about. The rest, Old Ben is a fine Jedi, I guess. Farm by Luke is kind of dead. R2 will absolutely be on the CLS team initially, but it may fall off as I farm up 3PO and Chewie or get C-3PO itself. Into the sort of meat of it. From 1 to 60, I've got mapped out each node farm and each store farm. Now, some of these characters I will initially only be aiming to just have unlocked, and then I'll come back to once I've 7-starred everybody else. Otherwise, it's going to be a case that all of my energy refreshes every single day will just be going into hard node farms, and early game that's not great because hard node farms are also kind of, just energy farms are kind of your source of gear as well. But on the light side, Night Sister and IG-11 are really, really early. Mon Mothma comes online not that long after, same as Admiral Piet. Mara Jade is 54, 8th brother and IG-2000 are on the same node, also 54. On the dark side, you don't even need to go that far. Queel and TIE Bomber come on at, I believe, 48, 49, and they're the latest in that set of characters there. It's worth bearing in mind that on the light side, everything up until Mon Mothma only costs 60 energy to do the full farm a day. From that point, it's 80. And on the other side, everything up to Queel is 60 energy. So Mando, Radis, and 2 of the 5 Inquisitors are all 60 energy farms, which is pretty efficient. Queel also gives you TIE Bomber, which we won't use immediately, but will be super useful later. Cantina nodes I kind of already covered. Farm by Luke I've just 7-starred. Old Ben I'll come back to once I've 7-starred 5th brother, because I want that Inquisitor team up to a reasonable standard, because my initial plan is to keep using them in Squad Arena. Now, as for the shops in the early game, the Arena shop, first 7-star has got to be Cassian, followed by Admiral Akbar for Fleet Arena. Tarkin will be useful later, so he's next, and then Princess Leia for CLS. Sitting at about the top 1,000 will net you 600 currency for that shop a day, 400 from your actual reward, and 200 just from doing your dailies. So each individual character, 15 shards a day is the average, so it's about 22 days, 3 weeks, just over 3 weeks to do each one. So 12 weeks, 13 weeks should actually have completed that list. On the guild shop, Han, Jin and Wampa. Jin being priority 1 for the ship and for the Admiral Radis team, followed by Han Solo. Now Wampa is going to take a bit more time, but that's okay. All I need initially anyway is him unlocked by the time I get to Grand Arena for a solo potential. I don't need the 7-star him by then. Priority is going to go elsewhere. In the Cantina shop, what I did on this account is I unlocked Biston, then I went and unlocked Boba Fett, and then I jumped back and started to farm up Biston. Now, the initial plan is to 7-star Biston, then 7-star Boba, then 7-star Stormtrooper Han. Now that may change because at 60, Cashin's U-Wing will appear in that store as well. So it might be a better idea, we'll have to see how I'm doing in fleet, to focus away from whichever character I'm doing at that time to build up the ship, because Fleet Arena is the biggest source of crystals, at least while leveling, for any account. Galactic Warshop, we could honestly end up doing way more than this, but again, at 60, ships come into that shop. So by 60, the plan is to have 7-starred K2, 7-starred Biggs, and 7-starred Cad Bane, if at all possible. I think it's going to fall ever so slightly short, because I'm level 50 now, and I'm 60 shards away from 7-starring K2, which will be 2 days, but leveling progress is almost a level per day, and it's about 11 days per character, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to hit 60 before I've 7-starred Biggs. But so it'll be a little juggly from that point on, but the plan anyway is to 7-star all 3 of those characters and throw whatever into ships that I can. On the fleet nodes, which unlock from 60 to 70, this is sort of the overall plan. I'm going to go over what feeds into nodes and other shops after 60 that wasn't available before now in a sec, but the major unlock is fleets at 60. Now in the nodes, for the first 5 levels of fleets being available, the only node I'm really interested in is the TIE Fighter node, 1C, so we'll be using probably some normal, or rather than the hard nodes, refreshing some normal nodes at that point to get gear. Once we hit 65, Slave 1, Biston's U-Wing and Raven's Claw all become available. I'm going to unlock them all initially, and then sink currency into whichever's doing more work in the Fleet Arena, which may well be the Raven's Claw. It also might be Biston's U-Wing, and considering Biston's U-Wing also gets me a character, it might be the most efficient, but we'll play that by ear at the time. In the fleet store, Darth Vader is there, the Pathfinder is there, Vader's ship, Biston's U-Wing, Biggs' X-Wing, and the Razor Crest. The highest priorities here will be the TIE Advanced and the Razor Crest, because they're not really available anywhere else. The TIE Advanced has 1 node, but it's 4. It's quite difficult, especially this early. I'm going to struggle to finish that initially, so the shop is probably going to be my easiest access to TIE Advanced shards early, and it's the only way to get the Razor Crest. So I'm going to be picking them up whenever I see them, and if I'm sitting on excess currency, the 2 other ships will probably take priority over the characters, because Vader I'm going to just passively earn just by doing achievements anyway. Over 60, few nodes to be added in. As I said, Cashin's U-Wing appears in the Cantina shop from that point on. If I've 7-starred all the characters in Arena, I'm going to move on to IG-88, because at that point we'll already be farming a ship along with 8 Brother. On the Cantina nodes, Kyle and the TIE Fighter pilot are the ones worth looking at. I would really be pushing to 7-star Kyle as soon as possible, because his ship is awesome. And in the Galactic Warshop, when I'm not farming Biggs or Cad Bane, I can throw some into the TIE Fighter and Biggs' ship. So that should all tie up fairly neat. Once we get over 70, there's a lot more stuff on nodes that is going to interest us. Droideka is on the same node as the Xanadu Blood. Xanadu Blood isn't a requirement for anything, but it's a really, really good ship under Executor, so we'll be looking at it whenever we can. Jango Fett is on the same node as the Houndstooth. This is massive. Jango is awesome. Jango fits into Bounty Hunter teams, he fits into Separatist teams. High enough Jango can unlock Padme almost on his own, and he also fits into Mandalorian teams, which gives him some viability for the Crate Raid. On the dark side, Bosk is a node. He's probably the best bounty hunter lead that isn't just fishing for a payout. He's a really tanky character. His ship is super tanky. it's so worth it. By then, we may have access to the fleet node for the TIE Advanced. It remains to be seen if we get there, and if so, whether we have the energy to spare from the other ships. Ships are still slow farm. There's nothing that can be done about that. So while this may be something we can access at the time, it may still not be something that we're doing. Now, on the Cantina nodes, Dash and Darth Talon are the two most notable ones that we didn't have access to before. Darth Talon is a decent support piece. We want her, but she's lower priority here to Dash, because Dash gives us another ship in the Outrider. He gives a whole team viability. If you pair him with Vandor Chewbacca, you can make a really, really hard to shift defensive team, especially putting Quill and IG-11 in there as well. There'll be so much revive, so much health recovery, so much protection recovery. It's pretty tough to put away. Someone will need to overinvest into dealing with it, which is exactly what we want. On that point, not that much comes into the shops that we actually want at this point. Bearing in mind that Jabba is the end goal, Mob Enforcer, Gamorrean Guard, and Greedo are all Jabba requirements. So if we have nothing else to do in those shops, we can start doing those now. Savage is a Grand Arena machine. He is almost unkillable in Grand Arena. He can deal with a bunch of teams on his own once you get the Omicron Live. And there's not a huge amount of characters on this list that you sink an Omicron into. So he could feasibly be your first. And he's going to do an awful lot of work. Now, once we hit 85, any journeys that we haven't already attempted, some of them will only become open at that point. Chewbacca and Han's Millennium Falcon are completely impossible to do until you're 85. R2-D2 can be unlocked with the Inquisitors or with whatever other Empire characters you have lying around. It's not a hugely difficult event. Palpatine, same, will have a surplus of rebels between the CLS requirements and the Rogue One team to tear through that event, and Palpatine is still a really strong arena character, a really good offensive lead in Grand Arena. He will have a place on a Star Killer team later. Doesn't ever really lose viability. CLS is another thing that we may be able to do before 85, but if we don't, it's going to not be very difficult to do at 85. The rebels that are required from, we should have all at 7 stars at that point, and they shouldn't need more than gear 8, gear 9 for the event to be possible. So that one's an easy bag, and another massively good Grand Arena team. Beskar Mando, if we haven't got at this point, we should be really pushing to 7 star all his requirements on the hard nodes to do because of his ship. His ship is ridiculous. It makes bounty hunters incredibly good, even without the Executor, and it pushes them into the realm of the stupid with the Executor. And even as a standalone character, he is pretty good. You can slot him into a Dash team, you could start on his own Scoundrel team. It's a fairly good catch-all Scoundrel leadership, so whatever you have lying around can fit on there easily enough. Chewbacca, again, you're going to have bounty hunters at this point. I've seen this done with Bosk, and I've seen it done without Bosk, so you may be able to do it before Bosk is at the star level that would leave him available for this event. You're going to have Mando and Greef pretty high starred, reasonably high geared. They can walk through this almost for you. And the second you get the Razor Crest, you don't even need to wait for Hen's Tooth to do the Millennium Falcons event. It can scythe through it on its own. Now, all of this should leave us roughly here for the first Grand Arena that will come on at 85. You're aiming to have the Radis, the Mon Mothma team, and the Bosk team on defense, along with an Executrix fleet. Now, depending what's on that Executrix fleet is kind of up to you. You'll have some bounty ships, you'll have some Empire ships. Use whichever you have that are most powerful at that point. On offense, Inquisitors are going to be an offensive team. Commander Luke is, to this day, still one of the most powerful offensive teams in the game. I've seen it beat Galactic Legends, or it's really strong. And the Empire team with Mara Jade is a turn meter train, so far better on offense than on defense. I recommend holding that one. Now, you're not actually required to put Vader onto that team. Vader can sometimes go against an entire team on his own. If his gear level's decent, he can sometimes 1v5 Geonosians, which is pretty awesome. And your offensive fleet is the Rebel one. Raven's Claw allows you to circumvent a lot of taunting tanks. So sometimes you can run this entire fleet into Houndstooth fleets and just completely ignore the Houndstooth until it's last. And generally speaking, if you have the Millennium Falcon at this point, when it comes in, you mostly win. So I am aiming for this exact point. Now, today I'm going to leave it there. I have more pages on this guide that go past this point, expanding on the fleets, expanding on Grand Arena teams, or if you wanted to go straight into more Jabba requirements, farming C-3PO, farming Jedi Knight Luke, those are places you could go from here. But if I carried on this video and went in every direction you could possibly go from that point, I'd be here for hours. So we're going to leave it here, and I'm going to post a follow-up video whenever I get a chance that's going to show the multiple directions that can be taken from here. But I want to wait until I've gotten the actual account a little bit further along and have a better idea of which of those directions I'm actually going to take before filling in the blanks here. But thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the content, like, subscribe. I'm going to try and get a video once a week on progress at least. And as the guides get finished, they're going to come out. Thanks so much for your time.